awesome. Yo, 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 what it do, what it do. It's your boy, Yo the Poet. And today I am here with Mr. Bob. How do I pass it? DePasquale?
DePasquale.
DePasquale.
There you go.
Don't mean to butcher the name.
No worries, brother. No worries, man. I'm happy to be here. How you doing?
Awesome, awesome. I am grateful to have you here. Thank you so much, Bob, for joining YTP Entertainment. I am looking forward to this awesome thing. I see in your backdrop that you actually talk about personal finance. Please, and you're an author. I love that. So please elaborate more for us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thought you might like that I'm an author. I wouldn't call myself a poet though. That's a unique skill, my brother. That's one of them things where you got to be able to say what you want to say and get out. In this baby behind me, I had 50,000 words to say everything that I wanted to say. Yeah, so the book is called Personal Finance in a Public World. I spent many years working in the financial industry. I still do. But I about a year and a half ago, my business partner and I left our previous firm that we worked for. Wow. And I realized there was a lot of unfinished business, if you will. And because of compliance and different reasons, it was really hard for me to do media, I couldn't write a book, and podcasting would have been pretty challenging. So finally, when we left and started our own firm to focus a little bit deeper on the families that we work with the best, kind of had some unfinished thoughts that I wanted to share that I really wouldn't be able to too much anymore to individuals. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna put it in a book, and let me take 12 or 13 years of dealing with people and their money and technology these days, and let me put it in the book. So it's all about how social media, technology, and ads affect how we make money decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
I believe strongly that money is a powerful tool in our life. It's not the final goal for most people, or should it be really? It's a tool that we can use for good, I believe. And if we have a healthy relationship with money, and then these days we also need a healthy relationship with technology, as you might know. And if we can do that, our lives will be much better. The world will be a much better place. So that's why I wrote the book.
I totally agree with you on that. We definitely have to have a personal relationship with money, because so many people look at money in so many different ways. They look at it in a negative aspect, but I believe that the points of views that a lot of people make on money are sometimes connected to their past experiences. And those past experiences can either be positive or negative. It just depends on what that person goes through and their perception of how they went through things.
Completely agree. Having worked with thousands of family, literally thousands, not an exaggeration, but just having these deep conversations with people, that the intention wasn't to have a deep conversation. It was they would come into the office, or they would call me up and they'd say, hey, I got a couple of things I need you to help me with. And I did a little bit of digging, and I realized exactly what you're saying. The relationship that they would have with money is often modeled what they experienced earlier in their life. Whether that's healthy or unhealthy or good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's just typically how they've experienced it. Exactly. And a lot of times they have to think about that. They have to acknowledge that first.
Yes, yes. And if those things aren't acknowledged, it's kind of like doing the self-preservation exercise, if you would. And when you're doing self-preservation, you're usually mapping out your positives, your negatives, what your positive strengths are, what your negative strengths are, and how those things apply to you today. So when you're doing those things, you're actually looking at yourself and you're saying, here's something that I can work on, and here's something else that I can work on, but how do I make those things work for me now? And if you haven't looked at yourself and gotten to know yourself, then you're pretty much lost. You really don't know how you're going to get things to actually work for you. And you find yourself going into a downhill slope, as opposed to moving forward with things that will actually help you progress in life. And I look at money pretty much the same way,
I agree. Yeah, that's a great way to put it, man, because I've seen people spiral out of control pretty quickly with their finances because of some bad decisions. And normally it takes time to grow. If one of the chapters in the book is specifically about investing, and it's a little, it's a lot about delayed gratification and patience. You know, so to grow financial wealth, it normally takes time. There's a very few people who win the lottery or, you know, do something like that. And statistics show that people who get a windfall of money frequently lose it pretty quickly. So it's a tough subject because, yeah, you can go downward pretty fast. And it usually takes a lot of time to grow. So if everything can be taken down pretty quickly, it can be very intimidating, is what I'm saying. And I find people that acknowledge the things that they maybe struggle with, and like you talked about, address them and just try to build simple habits. You know, it's not like, you know, you can't make a change overnight and expect to suddenly be financially rich or wealthy. It takes time. And if you can acknowledge that, I think you have a much better chance of being successful in the long run.
Yes, indeed. And it takes work. It takes work. You have to be willing to put in that work. You have to be um, effortlessly ready and willing to say, I'm not going to give up regardless of what. I'm going to keep doing what I have to do and learn from whatever your negative experiences are, learn from your positive experiences. Because that's one of the things that a lot of people don't speak about. They don't speak about their negatives as a learning experience. They speak about their positives as a learning experience, but they omit to speak that their negatives are also an experience, because without those negatives, you don't have the balance to say, hey, I'm going to go this way or I'm going to go that way, because I've learned that now I need to go this way in order to be successful.
I hear you. And when you think about it, I would argue honestly that there's a select few negative, really, really hard times in your life. I know it's been the case for my life, where those hardest times actually teach the best lessons, even better than the successes. Not that the successes shouldn't be celebrated and aren't good, but there's always some times that are really, really challenging that seem to yield the most growth for people.
Yes, yes, that is so true. That is so true. So tell me, what are some of the struggles that you went through and how have they affected you today?
Oh man, how much time do we have, my friend? So I'll tell you the story that really shaped and changed my life about half of my life ago. It happened now, which is kind of crazy that it's been that long. But when I was 18, I was going off to college, and I don't know if when you were 18, but I thought I was invincible. You know, I thought nothing could take me down. You know, my friends couldn't take me down, my school couldn't take me down. You know, the world, nothing was going to take me down.
Wow.
And I went off to college, and I was going to be playing football in college. Now, I grew up for the most part in South Florida. I was actually born in New York, but I moved down to Florida when I was 3. And I thought it was going to be cool. I was going to go back up to New York, go to school, you know, maybe get an education. To be honest with you, I don't know how important that was at that time in my life, but I was going to learn a little bit. I was going to go back where my family's from to get to know them, my cousins and my family a little bit better, because I didn't really know them that well. I only saw them, you know, occasionally every couple of years on holidays. And I was also going to play ball. I mean, that was like the perfect thing for an 18-year-old dude.
Right.
So I go up there. I think I'm going to take on the world. I'm in my freshman year of training camp, and I'm trying to, you know, prove myself to my coaches. I'm just the freshman from Florida, you know, no one really knows who I am. Maybe the coaches that recruited me, but really I was a nobody. And in maybe the 3rd or 4th practice that we had, I pulled my groin muscle. Now, I don't know about you. It's another thing. If anyone's out there ever pulled a groin muscle, that is a brutal injury. Like, you don't even realize how much you use that muscle. I mean, you can't walk, you can't sit down, stand up, lay down, sleep. Like, it was brutal.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, wow, what a horrible timing. I'm asking, I'm like, God, like, you're killing me here. Like, why do I have this injury? Like, heal me overnight. Like, I want to feel better so I can go out there and ball. And I remember doing this exercise to rehab, and a college training room and facilities are way more advanced than high school. So if you can picture this room that's probably 100 feet long, and there's just 100 people in there on any given morning during training camp, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And the commotion is just unbelievable at that hour. And I remember doing this exercise where I would sit on a stool that had 3 wheels on it. So not a stationary stool, but there were wheels, and I would have to shimmy myself across this training room. And part of the exercise was to dodge people, because there was so much commotion going on. And at one point, maybe a week into doing this, our head trainer, who's all of maybe 5'8", 140 pounds, I mean, not a very big guy. I remember he used to have to stand on this box to get everyone's attention because no one would see the guy. And it must have been, I mean, the noise and commotion going on there, but all of a sudden it got dead silent this one day, or at least it seemed like that to me. And Rick stands up in this box and he's like, Bobby, and that's what they call me. They call me Bobby. You got to get back out on the field, quit being a weakling. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this trainer, this little dude is calling me out in front of all my, coaches and trainers and new teammates. I feel like such a loser. And I said, Rick, I went up to him, I said, Rick, like, we got to have a conversation about this. A, I'm not really happy with you calling me out like that. But number two, something's not right. This ain't getting any better. So he's like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to send you to the doctor. It's been too long for a groin injury. So over a period of a week, now I'm 18, so I'm technically an adult, but I am definitely not an adult mentally at this point in my life. I'm still borderline an adolescent when it comes to the mind. Ask my wife. But so I'm driving all over New York, Long Island, like going to all these tests by myself. And the majority of them, I had sonograms, CAT scans, ultrasound, MRI, you name it, every test in the book. And I would go to these appointments and I'd have to fill out all this paperwork. It would take me over an hour. I mean, insurance, car, I mean, I don't know how any of that stuff works as a kid at that point. And I would be in there for 2-3 hours in these appointments, especially the MRI. Oh, the MRIs are the worst. You're sitting there forever. Claustrophobia. And finally, I had an appointment on a Thursday. And this Thursday, when my parents were flying up from Florida to New York, they were supposed to be coming to my first ever college game. And I expected them to land and get to my uncle's house, where they were going to be staying, because remember, my family's from up there. And I would call them after I got out of my appointment. But this appointment went really fast. I got in, had no paperwork to fill out. They took me almost right into the room, sat at a desk, and the doctor comes in and he sits down. And I mean, he didn't say anything but, Bobby, got your reports, you have cancer. And that was it. That's all he said to me. And my jaw dropped, hit the desk, and I was like, what? And he's like, I know you're in shock. We'll get a treatment plan. We're going to hook you up with an oncologist, but you can go now. And that was it. And he told me to leave. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, that's crazy. I like I said, I was in shock, and I walked out of the building. And the moment that I walked out of the building, I mean, like clockwork, my phone rings, and it's my mom. And she's like, hey, how'd the appointment go? We just landed. And I'm like, about the appointment, Mom. So I had to tell her that I had just been diagnosed with cancer. And I said it, and she, I mean, I could see, or I could feel like the air in the car that they were in just come out. I mean, she said so much without actually saying anything. And I thought to myself, wow, this is crazy. And the only thing I could hear was my dad on the other side. He's like, Susan, what's wrong? Like, he could tell something was wrong too. My mom's name is Susan. And we ended up meeting back at my uncle's house later that day. And, maybe 15, 20 minutes later. And I hadn't seen my parents in months. I gave them a big hug, and we shed some tears and said some prayers and kind of looked at each other like, what is going on?
Wow.
So, ended up speaking with the oncologist the next day, and he told me, you have to take classes. Like, you can't do nothing. We don't know what the treatment protocol will be, but don't drop your classes. So I had this in my mind for the following week. Well, that was a Friday. That Saturday, which was supposed to be my first game, obviously I wasn't playing in it at this point. My uncle's best friend came over his house, and we're all sitting there in the morning, and his name was Tim O'Brien. I'll never forget this. And he comes in and says hi to my uncle and my aunt, and introduces himself to us and says, Bob and Susan, I can't imagine what you're going through with your son right now. This is crazy. Here's my keys. Take my car, and for as long as you possibly need it to do whatever you have to do to get your son treated for his illness, you can have my car. Mm-hmm. And my parents were flabbergasted. They were like, what? This guy just giving us his car? That's crazy. And he was there for maybe 15 minutes, Yellow. And he said goodbye to my uncle and bye to us and left. And that was it. 15 minutes was gone. So we fast forward a couple of days now. It's Monday morning, I go to my first ever college class. We take Tim's car all over creation for a few more doctor's appointments to figure out what we're going to do. And Tuesday morning comes, and it's my second ever college class. I go into the class, total, normal, whatever, come out. said, you know what, I'm kind of hungry. Before I go back to my uncle's, let me grab something to eat. I went to the cafeteria and I was eating a breakfast burrito. And do you remember those, like an old school, small, like maybe 8-inch tube television that would hang from a bracket at
Yeah,
a public
yeah,
place? No, not like a flat screen like this thing behind me, but like
right.
there's an old school. I
It's
I
kind
think it was color. It wasn't black and white, but it was a color TV. And
yeah.
it's hanging from this bracket in the corner of the ceiling and the wall. And the news is on. Now, I don't know the news stations because I mean, I'm from Florida. So whatever's on TV, I'm just watching,
Right.
eating my burrito. And all of a sudden I'm watching it and a plane hits one of the Twin Towers in New York City. And I'm like, what a horrible accident. Like that's terrible. So I
Right.
called my dad and I said, Dad, did you see what's going on the news? He's like, yeah, I'm watching the news. It's crazy. This plane hit the tower. And we were talking for maybe a minute, whatever. And all of a sudden the second plane comes around and bam, hits the second tower. And
Wow.
my dad's like, this is not an accident. You better come back to your uncle's now. So I don't even think I finished the burrito. It's probably still sitting there to this day. Dropped it, hopped in a car, and I drove. It would typically take me 15 minutes to drive from school to my uncle's house. It took me 9 hours.
Oh,
I did the whole drive. Now, listen, subsequently, I went to graduate school. I have a master's degree in broadcast journalism. I worked in radio. I love radio and podcasting, but I will never, ever listen to 9 straight hours of AM radio ever again. But it was riveting. I was in the car driving with the burning towers of 9/11 terrorist attacks in the distance, listening to it on the radio, and in bumper to bumper traffic, people trying to get out. It was crazy. And 9 hours later, I pulled into my uncle's neighborhood. It's dark. It's almost dark out at this point. And I ran out of gas in his neighborhood. So we're pushing my car into his driveway and we're thinking like, this is nuts. Like, what's going on with my life? First I was like, well, my life's probably over since I have cancer. And now the world's coming to an end because of these attacks. What's happening? And my aunt was hysterical. She was, because we couldn't get a hold of my uncle who was on business the night before. Subsequently, we found out that he was okay. He was in Denver and he was supposed to fly home that morning, but his flight got canceled. And he called maybe 8 o'clock at night and said, hey guys, I'm okay. I'm sure you've been panicking, but the phones have been out. I've been trying to get through all day. I'm safe. I'm going to try to hop a flight tomorrow, but everything's fine. I'm okay. Don't worry about it. And my aunt was going to hang up the phone, but he was like, no, wait a minute. But one last thing. Tim, my best friend, who you guys just met a few days ago, he was in the tower this morning and he died. And we were like, oh man, that's terrible. And come to find out, Tim was this incredibly generous guy. He worked for a investment bank called known as Cantor Fitzgerald. They're still around these days. But that morning, hundreds of employees that were in that tower that would be in the office early on a weekday morning, they all died. And that whole firm is extremely generous. They would donate office space to my uncle's foundation for cystic fibrosis, which is a disease that my cousin has. And just about everyone from the foundation, except for this one lady, Tammy, would never be in the office that early. So none of the people lost their life. Tammy was uncharacteristically late, and God bless her, because I don't know what happened or why, but she was just uncharacteristically late that morning and was in the subway below the tower. And she survived. She's okay. But the stories that she could tell, are unbelievable. And so that morning was that whole day, obviously, a lot of people remember where they were, but it makes me realize about, we don't really know how long we have on this earth.
That's true.
And the thing that Tim did for me, and come to find out all the other things that he's done for other people over the years, his kids were little at that point. I mean, his poor wife and family, but they've since grown up, and I've had an opportunity to talk with them since. Both of my cousins have been married and we've been to weddings. I've had more time to actually talk to them as adults, and the stories they've told me about Tim are amazing. And he really lived out his generosity. So combined with what happened with Tim and a whole host of other things and stories that I could talk to you for hours about, there were some really generous acts that happened in my life at that point. And you talked about, your original question was like struggles and challenges. And that obviously was a very, very challenging time in my life. And I didn't know I was going to make it through. But between Tim and a few other things that happened to me, I realized that it's not all me. I thought I was going to be the best cancer patient in the world. And I'll tell you more stories about the things that I did to overcome cancer, and what I thought was most important. Come to find out, it was other forces of generosity and the plans that God had for me in my life at that point. And so now I look back and I say, you know what? Ever since then, I will never give up an opportunity to be generous to someone in some way, because you know what? None of us may change the world, but we might change the world for one person. And so that's been a really, really important part of my life. So that struggle, and I think about it every day. Another non-exaggeration, not a day goes by in my life where I don't think of that week-long period in my life. And it reminds me that we have an opportunity to do great things. So I always remember that.
Yes, yes, indeed. Wonderful story. Wonderful story. I mean, it's definitely giving me a bit of chills here, because there are some things in your story that I can actually relate to. It's it's amazing how you were even willing to share that story. I definitely appreciate it, and I'm hoping that the audience appreciates it as well. Um, I tell you, it was pretty rough for me growing up as a child. The suffering, physical and mental abuse as a child. It was crazy, and thank goodness for my grandparents, typically grandmothers, two grandmothers and a great grandmother. Um, Without them, I don't think that I would be here speaking the way that I am, because my mindset probably would have been in a different place, all over the place by now.
Mhm.
But I too, when I was 18 years old, I didn't feel like I could own the world or anything like that. Thanks to my grandmothers, I
Mhm.
was in a place where I was able to say, hey, look, if I can help somebody, I would. Because I had started a business of mine as doing murals at the age of 15. And I didn't tell anybody, I didn't even tell my grandmothers that I had started this business, because I wanted to see where it would go and
Mhm.
how much personal growth I could actually get from it. It wasn't even about the money, although for a 15-year-old, I made pretty good money. $3,000 here, $1,000 there. I made pretty good money, but it wasn't about the money. It was more so about understanding the relationships between myself and a diverse group of people. That's what it was really about. And I
Mhm.
tell you, to this day, I am honored, I'm grateful, and I appreciate that experience, because even to this day, I'm able to speak to diverse groups of people, and I love it. I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. And that also brings me to this point. In your struggles, how have your struggles helped you to structure your business today?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked it like that before. That's awesome. By the way, commend you for overcoming what you've overcome too. And
So,
I feel like, I don't know you that well, but I feel like your creativity is really a good strength and outlet for you. I think that's awesome.
thank you so much. Same here.
Yeah,
Same here. Thank you.
that's really cool. So to answer your question, how has my struggle shaped my business? Um, Well, two things come to mind. Number one is the firm that my business partner and I founded is called Initiate Impact. It's a wealth management firm focused on generosity. So what we do, we do your typical handlings in the wealth management space. Whether it's retirement planning or helping people invest their money, understanding their risks that they have. Whether it's um, you know stuff as deep as death, or as simple as maybe some poor investment returns, but we counsel and help people make wise money decisions so that they can be generous. And I think that's the key. So I told you about the generous things that Tim O'Brien did for me and my family,
Yes.
and I did the other things. Like I said, there's a laundry list of other things that happened to me, that other people put in my life at that point, that helped me get through, that it took me years and years to really work through the emotions and understand. So the reason why we help people manage their money wisely the reason why we do tax returns, and the reason why we help people when they're purchasing homes, or help them make decisions on where to put their money, or help them start a business, or do bookkeeping. The reason why we do all of these tasks that a lot of people think are kind of boring and not, almost necessary evils, which, to be honest with you, I'm in the business and I think it is too. Like, no one really enjoys doing a tax return. But you got to do it right. You want to do it the right way, and not just the right way because you want to be a rule follower. I mean, that's important as well. We're always going to do it properly and legally, but if you do it right, you can maximize the value that you have to do good in the world. And so that's why we do those things. So the first thing that comes to mind is absolutely that the generous things that people have done for me. I realize that in my life, I know the things that I'm good at. I know the skills that I have, and I feel called to use them to do well. So if I'm really good at managing a team of people that helps people manage their finances, then I'm going to go a million miles an hour towards doing that as best as I can to help people make wise decisions and hopefully have better lives. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that comes to mind too is I realize the work that we do in the financial industry is becoming less and less about numbers and net worth and taxes and interest rates, and more about people's well-being. And so I think what we do, and in fact, I know, I've seen it. I mean, we poll our customers. We've done events on these type of things. It's not a question anymore. It's an absolute fact. I have the proof and the data is that people's lives are better. They feel more fulfilled when they have that healthy relationship with money, which is what I was talking about when we were talking about the book. So I truly feel like we're making people's lives more fulfilled, and we're making the world a better place by lessening the stress that people have around their financial tasks or their business, and giving them the time and the energy. I think that's key too. So there's definitely a value of the service that we provide because it gives you back time. You don't have to do those things yourselves or worry about them. And I don't want to minimize that, but it's the energy I find is most important, because when you're not mentally fatigued, and you're not concerned and worried about and stressed about your financial life.
Yes, indeed.
All of that energy that most people waste. And I've been there in my life too. This is not, I've never experienced this. I've been in my life where money was a huge stress for me. Once you eliminate that stress, and there's many other stresses, but that's one of them in life, a big one in life. I think we both agree. Once you eliminate that stress, it gives you more energy and effort to put towards the things that are most meaningful to you, whether that's spending time with your kids, whether that's traveling the world, whether that's volunteering at your favorite nonprofit organization, whether that's organizing a project that helps someone. It could be any myriad of things, but that just the fact that you're less stressed and more energized means that the time that you do get back is that much better time. It's not just time, it's time with quality to it. And it's so meaningful.
Yes, indeed. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Personal finances can definitely be a beast if you don't have them in order. So I definitely agree with you on that. So I ask you, during your time, what was the event that took place which led you to a deciding factor to start your own business?
All right. So can I give you two? Because
Sure.
So I'll give you the short one. It's almost kind of comical about how we started the business. So what better time to start a business than during a pandemic, right? So so we're during the pandemic, and our max size, we were working for a larger organization, and essentially like we're technically employees. We're what's called a statutory employee. So it's kind of like being a 1099, but we're a W-2 that gets the benefits of like health insurance, which was nice. But from a tax perspective, we're basically 1099. And not to get into the weeds in too much, but essentially we kind of owned our own business, even though we worked for a larger organization. So there were some benefits to that, and there were also some drawbacks. Well, one of the benefits is that we had like lots of support. So we could call up anytime and talk to whoever we needed to. One of the drawbacks was that we're kind of on an island when it comes to like office space and employees and expenses and running, like the typical day-to-day business type of thing. So my business partner and I would have and she wasn't a business partner in title at this time. We were just working together on this team here in South Florida. We would have our office meeting, or our like leadership meeting, if you will, at 8:30 in the morning before our 9 a.m. Monday morning team meeting, where the whole team would come together. So, but we couldn't have it in person anymore because of the pandemic. The office was closed, and we, it's not like we were going to drive and meet somewhere. So we would just have it on the phone, and which is what we do now. But back then it was a big adjustment. And I remember one of these days over the weekend, I had a bunch of thoughts. I don't know if I was listening or reading something. I don't know. I was deep in dive on the business and trying to learn and try to be better and figure out how to navigate the pandemic. And I said to her that morning, I said, Stacy, before we even start the conversation and get into all the weeds on the management stuff we have to talk about, I want to ask you a question and give me an honest answer. And I said, what would you think if we left the company and started our own? And I expected her to say, you're nuts. And she had worked for the company longer than I had at that point. Wow. And she goes, and this is her response, I think that's a great idea. And I was like, what? And so you asked what the event was that led to us starting our own company. That 5-second or less interaction sparked, I mean, within a few months, we had already had the plans laid out. I mean, we were ready to go. So that was the actual, like, in action practical step that led to it. But I'll tell you a quick story. There's a deeper version of this story in the book. One of the chapters in the book is about this and the meaning behind serving others. But I had an opportunity. My previous firm at the time was the largest donor to an organization called Habitat for Humanity. I don't know if you're familiar, but
yes.
They build homes and sanitation systems all over the world for families.
Yes.
And they do great work in the United States. So if you're ever interested in volunteering at a Habitat project, by all means, would highly recommend.
I'm familiar with Georgia, from Georgia.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I was lucky enough. I don't know how I won this award, but at one point I was the Divisional Volunteer of the Year at my firm when we were at the previous firm. And part of that process, or part of the benefit, if you will, is they would send you on a Habitat build to another country.
Wow.
And I was at a stage in my life where I was, thinking about what happened to me when I was 18 and still trying to be a generous person, but I really wasn't in a position mentally or probably even financially to afford to go to another country and spend the money in donations and airfare and everything to go serve and take a week off of work.
Right.
But because I won this award, they sent me along with a bunch of other people from the company from all over the place. So I actually get to go meet a bunch of people that work for the company that I didn't even know because they lived in other states and countries and whatever. Cool. So we go down there, and the long and short version of the story is that what people have or don't have is not necessarily important. What's important is what they feel about the situation in life. And these people, if you compare their home to the home that I live in, or the vehicles that they didn't have, or the animals that they had, or the situation, or the the availability of technology that they have compared to what we have, is just it almost makes me emotional, like that these people live like that, but they're the most joyful people in the world.
Yes.
And what we gave to them pales in comparison in what they gave to us, and the relationships that you build with people. And the relationships that I built with the people in my company that I've never met before, they immediately became my favorite people in the company, because I don't think there's anything that is stronger than the bond you create in service to other people.
Yes.
There were things, man, that we did for those families. And I've gone back, I lead trips now. I go, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to, but I go myself now and I recruit people. So if anyone ever wants to go on a trip like this, God, please, open this up again so that the pandemic and everything's over, so we can go back overseas and do this, because they shut the program down. Hit me up if you want to go. Tell you it's life-changing. But the bonds that we the things that we did with those people, I would never do in my own house. I would never mix cement by hand, put bricks up, tamping and gravel. And I mean, I could tell you stories, a bunch of them for all the trips that I've been on, but I would never do those things probably even for my own home. But when you're sweating and you're putting in work and you're tired and exhausted and you do that with other, and you struggle with other people, you build these bonds. So the reason why that was so meaningful is because I realized that the value of that type of effort for people is truly life-changing. And so now the work that we did, and the reason why we started our company, is so that, going back to what we were just talking about, that the financial part of their life is not a detractor from doing stuff like that. I want other people to be able to do things like that. And I feel the best way for me and my skills, my business partner, to help people do that is to help them de-stress around money so that they have the time and energy, like I talked about, to go do something like that.
Yes, that is awesome. I've always wanted to do stuff like that because I already have some of the skill sets. I know how to do the drywall. I know how to
Oh,
the carpenter's frames. I already know how to do these things because as a teenager, I learned how to do these things in order for me to make money. And I worked up under a journeyman at that time because I thought that this was something that I wanted to do as a career path for
yeah.
myself. It turns out that it wasn't for me. It wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. But the beauty of it is, even to this day, like I literally built my own station in order to be able to do podcasts. So,
I, I give you a lot of credit, man. I'm not a handyman at all. So
so it's a lot of fun though. It's a lot of fun, and I would love to be on a project like that to help people out, especially when I know that this is providing an opportunity for them to have a better living. That is truly awesome. And I definitely commend you for that. I commend you big time. Thank you
thank you.
so much for being the type of person that's willing to even put forth the effort for other people. That is awesome. I love it. I love it.
No,
So
thank you. I, I,
this
I'm just convinced that the human mind and body, like, we're designed to do things for other people. Like, it doesn't mean that everyone's got to be a life-saving surgeon
mm,
or end world hunger. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is just the little things in life. Like, we're designed to support others. It feels good. There's a lady by the name of Wendy Steele. If anyone wants to kind of nerd out on some of the science and biology behind all this, there's a TED Talk that she did. She's the founder of an organization called Impact 100 Global. But if you just search Wendy Steele TED Talk, it's probably 12, 15 years old, this TED Talk, but it totally stands up. And it's all about the hormones of bonding and giving and how the mind is designed to experience those things. And it's almost kind of contagious. Most people like, you've received a gift before from someone, right? And it feels good, especially when it's unexpected. Someone does something for you. It's like, oh man, they love me and they care for me. And now for whatever they gave me, it's going to help me do whatever I need to do.
exactly.
Right? People get that. Now, a lot of people would also understand it also feels good to be the giver, right? Like, when you give the gift, when you're the person that offers something, that also usually feels good because you see that person, the joy on their face, and you see it helping them. But what
Yes.
often goes overlooked, and what Wendy points out and does and goes into the weeds on in a good way, like the way she explains it is great. And oxytocin is the bonding hormone. Women may have heard of this one. It's also related to childbirth when you talk about the bond between a
Yes.
mother and child. But when he talks about this, the third party, the onlooker, the other person that experiences this act of generosity, they also get that hit of oxytocin. They also feel joy. And
Right.
so that's why generosity is contagious, because if I give something to you or you give something to me, whoever else saw that happen and saw that
Yes.
nice act, it's
Yes.
also going to feel good.
That is so true. And it kind of reminds me also of back in the day, long before money was even invented, when the bartering system was very active, very active. I mean, it was like a favor for a favor. If whoever had the skill set, they would help out the people who didn't have the skill sets. And in return, we're going to do something for you because I have the skill set to do this. And it worked. It worked very well. And at some point in my life, I started wishing that we could actually go back to that and just totally eliminate the money,
Mhm.
because the money isn't as important as the foundation that we build, not only for ourselves, but the foundation that we build for our children, we build for friends, we build for a stranger. Those foundations that we help to build, that's the soil to our life. That's the soil
Mm.
to what makes us better.
Love that language. Yeah, the soil, man. That's awesome. I heard a quote. I heard a quote the other day. The grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener when you water it. Um, and it made me realize, like, yeah, I mean, we have, like, where we plant our seeds, like where we are in our current state of life is infinitely meaningful. Like the
Yes,
soil and the things that we build up from the earth, whether it's literally or physically, like excuse me, whether it's literally or figuratively, are so important. And yeah, I can only imagine going back to times before we had a monetary system and the Federal Reserve and interest rates and central banking and all that. That's a whole nother conversation for another
it
episode, probably.
is. Yes, it is. But think about it though. A lot of people feel that money is what makes us rich, but money doesn't make us rich. What makes us rich is personal growth,
Hmm.
understanding, knowledge, and how we take all those things that we've gone through in our entire life and put them together and make those things work for us and the society that we choose to live
Mm,
around.
love it.
That's what makes us rich.
Oh, 100%, man. I got a buddy of mine who hangs out on Twitter. He lives in Great Britain, actually. We've never met in person, but we always talk about the rich life.
Mhm.
And we do some spaces like social audio rooms on Twitter. And we title the room something about being rich. Inevitably, there's always people that come in and say, "Hey, I'm going to make you rich. Here's how I got rich." We're like, "No, man, we're not talking about financially rich. We're talking about rich in joy, rich in purpose,
Yes.
rich in relationships,
Mhm.
and those things are important." So yeah, I couldn't echo you more.
Definitely, definitely. So I have another question for you.
Okay.
So on the average, as an author, we usually take our titles, and our titles are usually connected to something personal about us. What would your title be connected to about you personally?
Oh, wow. So this is not a sales pitch on the book. By all means, check it out. But I tell personal stories in the book, and it's absolutely related to me. So personal finance to me is, there's a lot of books out there about personal finance. And so maybe, I don't know, if you might not be able to see the subtitle, but it's personal finance in a public world. And there's a little bit of a dichotomy there, because
Mm,
I realized in my life, social media to me in the beginning, when like Facebook and those things first started, it was kind of a cool tool to be able to communicate with people, right? That was kind of like web one. And then you got into the web two, and it started becoming more of a, broadcasting marketing
mm,
tool. And once that hit, it completely changed for me.
yeah.
I haven't voluntarily opened Facebook in well over a decade. I
Okay.
have an account. It's linked to my Instagram. I am on Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter a lot,
Mhm.
occasionally some of the other ones. So I'm not saying social media is bad,
Right.
but I realized we live such a public life.
Mhm.
And then finance is such a personal topic,
Mm.
right? Most people, like, going back, my wife's from small town Michigan, like, and even down where I live, where it's a melting pot and a little more open, but especially up there, there's just certain things that you don't talk about around the dinner table. You don't talk about sex, you don't talk about money, right? And so money is such a personal topic.
Mm.
But I realized in this public world, like there's so much information out there, and believe it or not, there's a lot of sources out there that are asking for your money. In fact, one of the stats from the book, over 2,100 times a day, we interact with some kind of media device, phone,
Yes.
tablet, whatever, swipe, text, touch, over
Mhm.
2,100 times a day. And so I titled the book that because I know that my so-called public social life is drastically influencing and affecting my personal finances. I mean, a lot. And once again, I tell a couple stories in the book about it, but we really need to set down our priorities first. And I got a few tips and tricks maybe that will help people realize what, like, how to use technology as a positive force in our life. And so that's why I titled it that. And then at the bottom of the title, it also says how technology, social media, and ads affect our money decisions. So each chapter is dedicated to a financial topic that most people at one point or another in my career have asked me about, or you could find, questions about on the internet. And then it addresses that topic and technology simultaneously. So there's a topic on investing, there's one on insurance, there's one on retirement planning, there's one on taxes, there's one on charitable giving, there's one on hiring a professional financial planner type. I mean, there's one on all these popular topics. There's one on cryptocurrency, if you're interested on that, economics, and they all address how to use technology to help you understand and manage that area of your financial life.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell me, when it comes to personal finance,
Mhm.
how does personal finance help you to structure your everyday life?
Well, like we talked about in the beginning,
Uh,
money is a tool, and that's the main tool of personal finance. The way I look at it is this: there's plenty of financial products and financial tools that you can, places that you can invest your money. There's applications, there's companies. None of those is subordinate to money itself. In
mm,
fact, I think money is just another tool. And so personal finance to me helps me structure my life, because what it does is it gives me access and allows me to handle the other things in my life. I know that I can't live if I'm not paying my mortgage.
yeah.
Right? I know that I can't eat if I'm not paying for my bills. So personal finance is just the application of all of the tools related to money, including money itself. And that enables you to do all the other things you want. And if you look at my social profiles, I'm the generosity guy. So one of the things that it really helps me do is it helps me be generous. And that's probably the most meaningful part of it. So
Yeah.
personal finance is a tool to help you live the lifestyle that you want to live.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So in the event that you're being generous, how does it make you feel, and what do you see in the people that you're helping?
Well, it makes me feel great. I don't know how else to describe it. It's the best feeling in the world. I mean, outside of maybe having a child or getting married, the feeling that my parents probably got when I was cured of my cancer. Like those are some pretty mountaintop experiences in life. But outside of those, I think acts of kindness and generosity to people are really the best, most elating feeling in the world. So it's easy for me to answer that. I've seen it many ways. Like even just opening a door for someone and seeing them smile is a good feeling.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Right.
I could
So
I couldn't agree with you more, because I see that, and those are some things that I do on a daily basis. So it's like when you see that smile, someone looks up at you and they're like, thank you very much," and it just gives a sense of joy, and it really feels good to be able to do something like that for someone and them to show the appreciation. And so one of the other things that I really love too is when you do something nice for a child. It is so cool, and it's so funny because
oh
not
yeah.
all children can actually talk, but the expressions on their faces exploding with thank you, I truly appreciate you. And some people don't actually see it. That's the sad part of it. Some people don't actually see the joy on the child's face. They're too busy waiting for that verbal response. And
Mm.
not cool, but looking at that joy is it's one of the most explosive points of joy that a person can ever feel when you do understand that a child is saying thank you with their facial expressions, not so much with their words.
No, I'm really glad you brought this up because my wife's the kindergarten teacher.
Uh-huh.
And you might think that a kindergarten teacher and a financial planner and, are completely different worlds,
It's not.
right? And we definitely think differently. We have different ways of operating, in our daily lives, although we love each other and we're very compatible, but we definitely think differently. However, I would be lying if I told you I haven't learned a lot about psychology from my wife and the stories of her teaching young people.
Mhm.
And I've even applied some of them to my daily life, in my professional life, in the work that I do, because I think you can learn so much from young people because they don't have the biases that we have. Their thoughts and ideas aren't skewed by years and years of experiences. So their reactions are natural. That's how humans were built and designed to react to things. Right or wrong, how they were designed, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But it's clear to me that young people display the natural free form of human thought.
Yes.
And so my wife's stories about young people, and now one thing I didn't share about my previous story is that maybe you were able to tell, but I had a groin injury. It was testicular cancer, and it actually had spread to my abdomen, and it was a pretty intensive process to cure myself. But because of that, as a result of that, we've been unable to have kids. So I'm infertile. So honey, love you to death. It's my fault that we can't have kids. We've tried different things. We had done sperm banking, in vitro fertilization, but we don't have kids of our own. So whenever I get an opportunity to spend time with young people, and we mentor high school and college kids, so we have a pretty good mix. Like I like to go into my wife's classroom when I can and spend some time with them. And so even though I haven't raised my own, I still have spent a fair amount of time with young people, and you're absolutely right. It's a really cool feeling, and it's almost an educational experience, at least for me, because maybe it's because I don't have kids. It's really amazing because the things I learn and see and understand and experience when I see how kids react to stuff is really cool. And you're absolutely right.
Yes, indeed. I love that. I love that. And even some people without children, they can see it. They can understand the vibe that the children give off and understand that this is probably the most genuine thank you, the most genuine act of joy, act of kindness that you're ever going to experience in your entire life is through a child.
Oh yeah. Genuine's the perfect word, man. That's it. They're so genuine.
They are. They're genuine. They're authentic. They
Yeah.
definitely keep me going because I actually drive a school bus outside of doing this, and
Mhm.
I'm with children of all ages every day, Monday through Friday, and it's a beautiful thing because you actually get to see how each child interacts differently than the other child, and I love it. I love it. I wouldn't change it. I would change the fact that I'm driving a school bus for my podcast, but I wouldn't change the interaction with the children.
Yeah. You're the first one outside of their parents. Like you're the first person related to school that they see every morning. I bet you there's some no pressure, but I bet you there's some psychology behind that. How important you are.
Well, I have 4 years of psychology under my
There
belt,
you go.
but I do love the children. It's I don't know. It's just something about that genuineness that protrudes. It protrudes and it protrudes so much. I can't help but to be happy about it. So
Oh, I don't know what happened with my camera. It just said, oh, it's too hot. All right, well, I'm still here, but my camera apparently let me sit down. My camera's out. But, man, it's a great conversation.
No worries. So
I'm still alive, I promise you. Oh, that's not the right camera either. What's going on here?
is it
There we go.
all good? It's
I'm gonna
awesome.
get the mic in the way so you can hear me.
It's all
Well,
good.
this is technology, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. Now you have a better view of the book.
We actually just talked about technology, how it could be your best friend one moment, and the next moment you're like, "What in the world did I get myself into?"
Yeah, I've never seen the camera say that before. It said it's too hot. I don't know. This conversation's been a little too hot, man. I guess I don't know. So,
So one of the other things that I want to ask you is, um, how effective do you feel that personal finance and living into say in today's society, how effective do you think that personal finance would help a person to build a new future?
oh, a new future. That's a great one. Well, especially if you've never really addressed budgeting and maybe if you have debt, I think it's could be life changing for sure. I've seen a lot of people. I could tell you a couple stories about people who seemed like there was no way out. Like they couldn't pay their bills. They were on paycheck loans. They had student debts, and their debt was getting higher. But just a few little personal financial tips and tweaks to the way that they either paid their bills or the way that they saved their money was completely life changing. Turned them from not only not only in a bad financial state, but a horrible mental state, right? I mean, we talked about how much the psychology behind understanding what it is that you do well, or understanding your finances and how important that is to be comfortable with it and have a good relationship with it. So yeah, it can be completely life changing. I mean, and I've also met people, by the way, who make a very, very high income, who have significant worth in their investments, but just couldn't balance a budget to save their life, and they have a horrible relationship with money.
Yes.
So personal finance is important for anyone, whether whether you're someone who's just starting out, maybe you're a student, you just got out of college and you have a lot of debt and you're trying to get a job, or you're 75 years old and retired. Like, it's still important for everyone. The one thing I'll say that uh, that's really important. I mean, outside of like actual tips and tricks on like how to actually do stuff, but the one thing you always got to keep in mind is that money, money's it indicates value, right? More than anything. So if it's important to make wise decisions based on the value that you place on things,
Right.
right? And I think that's most important. And when you consider the value of the things like in the future in your life, I think that can be a huge mindset shift when someone starts thinking, I really value X, whatever it is in a couple, having a home or getting married or having children or owning a business. Like, when you place the value on those things, you realize the importance of making wise decisions so that you can achieve whatever that is in the future.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, um, what would if you had to take two key takeaways for how you do financial planning versus how someone else does financial planning, what would be the two main takeaways that you would implement to your customers?
Oh, cool. So you're giving me a chance to sell my business, man. Love it. So the first thing is the generosity component. I think we already touched on that. Regardless of your level of wealth, if you're a customer, or we use the word partners, it's kind of synonymous with the word clients, but we partner with people in their mission. So we use the word partner. So if you're a partner of Initiate Impact, the name of my firm, we are going to address generosity in your plan. Whatever it is, it could, like I said, it could be as simple as just making sure you open doors. Maybe you're in a situation where financially you can't really give too much right now. We're still going to talk about it. So that differentiates us right there. I know a lot of advisors who are very, very good with the financial aspect of it, and that's all they concentrate on. No criticism of them, but what makes us different is we're always going to address the causes that are most meaningful to you and the things that you want to do to be a generous person. So that's number one. And then number two is, I'm the financial guy, if you will, that is going to tell you to spend your money. And here's what I mean by that. There's a lot of financial planners out there who are going to tell you, you got to save all your money. You got to invest. I want to put more money in my account. I want to invest your money. So give it to me, or don't spend it on this. You can't go out to dinner. You can't do what's fun. You got to save. I agree with those things in principle. I also believe in paying off debt. I believe in having a relatively debt-free life outside of a mortgage. And maybe if you're a business person and you need a business loan, I can understand that. But I believe in paying off debt. So all of those things I believe in. But here's the difference. Psychologically, if you spend money, and this is another thing that's proven, I've seen it over the years, if you spend money on the select few things that are meaningful to you, you are less likely to splurge on the things that the world tells you are important. So I don't mean buy a Lamborghini or overspend on your home or be foolish with your dollars. That's not the case. Exactly. But what are the select few things in your life that bring you joy? Is it Starbucks? Is it going taking your kid to the movies? Is it investing in personal development books that you want to read? Or is it a charitable intent? Listen, I don't care how much money I have in my budget. I'm giving my money to this local food pantry because I believe in feeding the hungry. Who knows? Right. Spend your money on those things. I'm telling you right now, one of the first line items that we do when we're doing a budget for someone, after the necessities, you have to pay your rent, you got to buy food. After the things that are absolutely non-negotiable, the first item that we select is what's the thing that's going to bring you joy? And if you buy that thing consistently, within reason, if you know what I'm saying, like I'm talking about, it is scientifically proven that you're going to be way less tempted to go buy the new outfit or to what the Instagram ad that you saw told you need to buy this new product, or out on the internet, or you saw a television commercial, or your neighbor just bought a new electronic toy. You're going to be way less tempted to buy that stuff. And I've seen the people who make those small spends on the things that bring them joy be way more successful sticking to their budget.
Wow. That definitely makes a lot of sense, because sticking to a budget, it's sometimes it's tough depending on the type of person, the type of spender that you are. It can be tough, it can be challenging, but there is nothing like staying within a particular budget. That right there opens so many doors of opportunity for you. It's just unreal. It is. It is
absolutely. You'd be surprised the momentum it brings. I'm telling you, man. Like, I can't tell you how many people they stick with it for. It's like a good habit. It takes a certain amount of time. Some say it's 30 days, some say it's 60 days. I don't know what it is for a good habit, but for good financial habits, when I see someone stick to something for a few months and they start reaping the rewards and seeing the benefit, there's nothing stopping that momentum, man. I'm telling you.
That is true. That is so true. Scientifically, it's been proven that 22 days is what it takes to create a habit.
22 days. All right, there you go. So for 22 days,
yes, indeed,
to your budget. And then after 3 weeks, you're going to be well on your way to taking that next step.
Yes, indeed. The tricky part is being consistent. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, you got to be consistent.
Yes.
I was listening to a podcast earlier today. They were talking about the 75 hard program. You ever heard of that?
Yes, I have.
You got to be consistent with the diet, the sleep, and the exercise for 75 straight days.
So, yeah, that is so true.
That's more than 22.
So, what would be some of your key points that you would share about life experiences and helping people to do better with what you train them to do?
Well, life experiences, we talked a little bit about my experience. I mean, I had a great, for the most part, growing up, I cannot complain at all. I was an only child. My parents gave up on me. Not gave up on me, excuse me, gave up after me. They're like, okay, we had one kid, that's enough.
Yes.
That's all we can handle. So I learned a lot of lessons early on about community, like needing to build community in my life. I mean, I consider myself an extrovert. I like my alone time, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have any siblings in the house, so I had to go out and make friends. And that's been a really big help in my personal life and my business life about networking. So I think from that point, from it being a young person experiencing that and being open with what happened, with the experiences that you have in your life, We talked a little bit earlier about the things that you just don't talk about, but I would say you got to be open to someone about the things that happen in your life, you know, those tough times.
You got to. So what are some of the ways that our audience can actually reach out to you and connect with you?
Yeah, would love to catch people on the socials, at BDEPA, BDEPA, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn too, pretty active on those. But if you want to hit me up directly, you can go to bobdepasquale.com. That's my personal site, and my business site. If you have financial questions and you want, want some counseling or just some help, we got a free program that people go through to help them work through some of the basic things, and free for life. So if you want to join, just want to get your feet wet, you can go to initiateimpact.com. You can find all the contact info there. But my DMs are open on the social, man. So anyone wants to hit me up, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to hit you up as far as the building is concerned, because I actually want to be a part of that program.
Cool, man. Awesome.
Build better homes. Yeah, I definitely want to be a part of that.
Yeah. Oh man, would love. I'd like to think next fall. So about a year from now, my hope is that they're ready to, because once they give the okay to be able to do them, then there's a lot of process to set all the trips up and figure out who needs the home and do the bit, all that stuff. So I'm hoping in the fall that we'll be taking the trip somewhere, probably to South America.
Sounds good to me. Well, Bob, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for everything. I truly appreciate you being a part of this show. You have definitely been an awesome guest. Thank you so much, man. And hopefully we can connect outside of this. That would be awesome. That would be super awesome. Well, that's my time. Thank you so much for being a part of YTP Entertainment. Peace and blessings to you, my brother. Have a great day and a great weekend.
All right, Yellow. Peace, brother.
Thanks, bro.